Thank you very much for inviting me. It's an honor and a big pleasure to be here. And I'm so thrilled about this museum and most of all of the very progressive educational activities going on here that I think, everybody can learn from. The question that I was asked is, how do we in Denmark encourage tolerance among children and adolescents with different cultures and religions? And my answer is a brief on how we develop, negotiate, implement, and try to find sustainable cultural policy solutions aiming at improving the educational role of museums in society to create equal access to culture. When I talk about sustainability, I refer to an integrated understanding of culture in interplay with economic, environmental, and social parameters. And then I want to stress that the Danish policy, of course, is informed by UNESCO and EU policy as well as ICOM, and not at least ICOM's diversity charter has been inspiring for us to focus on diversity. The educational plan that we have been the Danish Agency for Culture's strategic commitment in relation to state and state-approved museums from 2007 to 2013. The plan has influenced our present Museum Act and is partly maintained through our current children and youth strategy across the cultural field. The plan challenges and questions museums' research and educational practice, and its theoretical and methodological starting point is social museology, which has a social constructivist basis. Social museology expresses a change in the museological starting point from an object-focused museum practice to a people-centered, experienced and knowledge-based practice. The plan focuses on how museums manage their knowledge, recognition of different knowledge systems, and creation of knowledge. It addresses a rethink of what constitutes relevant knowledge today. This means new professional standards within the research and educational field and new requirements and expectations about the museum's role in the 21st century knowledge society. The seven action points that have been implemented in the form of national initiatives as well as surveys and through 5 pools that covers the action points has been handled as a dynamic and flexible tool. This means that experiences and knowledge from projects and surveys nationally and internationally has been adopted in implementing the strategy. Our initiatives for strengthening relationship between educational institutions and museums was based on a national survey mapping museums' learning potentials and programs offered for schools. The survey documented that all museums have activities for small children, but from 12 years it was almost nothing. And the survey also revealed a severe need for professional skills in terms of training among museum staff, lacking pedagogical and didactical skills and knowledge about curriculums to fully unfold the museum's learning potentials, which are the alternative learning space, the interdisciplinary approaches, different learning styles which are problem-oriented and practice-related, learning activities with scientific standards and social engagement. The survey was supplemented with qualitative studies to understand the obstacles that keeps young people away from museums and museums' difficulties in addressing and including young people. Based on these surveys, we prioritized our funding for formal educational programs, including 13 to 15-year-old youngsters and 16 to 19 years old attending high schools. We required that young people should be involved in developing projects, concepts to ensure quality and relevance. Also, we made recommendations that museums should have an educational strategy building on analog and digital resources for all age groups, developed in learning partnerships. As well, we required supervision of project work, facilitating of educators, establishing of training service for students from teachers, colleges of education and universities, identifying specific objectives and learning outcomes for all activities, and develop evaluation and action research in collaboration with our universities. From 2014, museums has been explicitly included in the new Danish folk school reform. The reform underlines inclusion and demands collaboration between schools, after-school clubs, daycare, and the museums. In terms of art and culture, new subject has been introduced, such as visual arts and design and craftsmanship, with new objectives emphasizing creativity, entrepreneurship, and understanding design processes. One of the 400 projects that our funding has supported is the Active Citizen Project, which is an example of a research and practice project on how museums' educational programs can support active citizenship. The project has been prolonged with focus on how curatorial practice can be developed from a citizenship perspective. The project started out with 10 art and design museums and was considered a training program for educational staff in the participating institutions. All institutions chose a case, and the project revealed a lot of misconceptions and incompetence, and of course a lot of learning. The concept of dialogue and cultural citizenship are based on the Russian philosopher Michael Bakhtin's theories, and it is focusing on a framework for multiple voices, participation, and self-reflection. The second part of the project also included cultural history museums and was focused on how curators and educators can support each other in developing new exhibition concepts to promote active citizenship. Dialogue based on multiple voices, participation, and self-reflection, and organizational change in the museum as well. The National Gallery's case was the exhibition Flowers and Worldviews. It was a complex and process-oriented project. And the result was people came on many repeat visits. The users were more diverse and they stayed longer. It included conservation workshops and also practical workshops and in the exhibition. Another case is the exhibition to celebrate the Danish philosopher Søren Kierkegaard's 200 years anniversary and at the Copenhagen City Museum. It was based on a partnership with the local communities and the Søren Kierkegaard Association, which conducts research on his philosophy. The overall theme became Søren Kierkegaard's concepts of love, and using his philosophical text as objects, as well as the museum's collection, and inviting the citizens of Copenhagen to donate and share their love objects and love stories in the exhibition as well. A biographical and phenomenological approach was used for this exhibition and this process. Other initiatives include different models of networking based on learning partnerships to ensure diverse relationships between museums and primary schools, teachers, colleges of education, and upper secondary schools and colleges. Learning Museums is a network for primary and secondary schools and teachers' colleges of education. Another network is established for secondary schools, and it's called Interface. And it's the basis of all the relationships is learning partnerships, which means the museums is learning and training and changing based on the partnerships as well as their partners. We are also developing a network for language programs for migrants and refugees, and this is also with the focus on how museums can learn from diverse groups and people with other cultural background than Danish. A model for developing research environments is also being developed and is established, and we call it the Sustainability Prism, and it's a hub for focus on action research, and it's connecting Danish museums with international researchers. We have also developed and implementing as means to a strategic development of the museum sector a quantitative user survey that 230 museums are participating in. It's compulsory for the state and state-recognized museums to participate, and a lot of other institutions have also chosen to join in. It's a Ministry of Culture that pays the survey, but we develop it in, of course, partnerships with everybody. All the museums receive their own reports, and everybody has access to everybody's results online, and this makes it possible to collaborate and have a common terminology that also makes it possible to work strategically and professionally together. The user survey shows that people who use this museum and cultural institutions are satisfied and that the overall satisfaction is increasing in step with visitor numbers. The survey also clearly demonstrates that we are still far from equal access to museums in Denmark. While elderly people, especially women with academic background, are overrepresented, people with vocational educational background are extremely underrepresented. Using museums is a social activity. Only 7% visit museums by themselves. According to our compass segmentation, community-oriented people are overrepresented and similarly individual-oriented groups are underrepresented. Young people are underrepresented in Danish museums. They make up 16% of the museum users, while they make up 22% of the population between 15 and 30 years. But we are experiencing an increase over the last 6 years from 12 to 16%. The survey also documents that people use museums because they want to gain new knowledge. Looking at user responses to core museum activities, it is evident that the priority areas are exhibitions, design, and atmosphere. In terms of John Fogg and Lynn Durkheim's motivation and learning styles, it's explorers and experience seekers that makes the majority of the museum users. When users are asked about their knowledge level, it's only people with academic background that think they know something of what museums are about. And I'm talking about 60,000 respondents in 230 museums over a period of 6 years. So it's quite reliable results. The user survey also contains, the compass segmentation and the motivation and learning behaviors and as well we have the socio-economical variables, users' socio-economical background variables as diversifying tools. But we thought we also need to get more insights about users' cultural diversity, and this is why we added a question addressing people's cultural affiliations. And we found out that not only are 26% of users of museums in Denmark now living abroad, but 31% of users living in Denmark express that they are culturally affiliated to other countries than Denmark. This is another call for emphasizing intercultural competences and dialogues in museums. Oops. The strategy has supported top-down, bottom-up, as well as in-reach and outreach approaches. The majority of the financial funds has been used in bottom-up approaches. Yeah. I hurry up. A requirement. We have been focused on training, and yes, we are always posing ourselves the question: how do we acknowledge the value of museums in society? Knowledge sharing and knowledge creation in relevant and qualified settings is never an ever-ending process. How do we negotiate democracy of today and tomorrow? Are museums platforms for developing and practicing cultural democracy? Social museology builds on a variety of knowledge systems. It addresses active citizenship and heritage in the making. It's an interdisciplinary practice embracing cultural and natural heritage as well as local and global perspectives. Developing learning organization must recognize gender, age, education, ethnicity, spirituality, and sexual orientation, and thus realizing the potentials that is inherent in diversity. Progressive museum practice is addressing the social and cultural imbalance. According to the education philosopher Gerd Biester, the moment democracy is born should not be understood as an interruption of the existing order. It's a reconfiguration of the order where new ways of being and acting exist and where new identities emerges. Biester sees democracy as a continual and never-ending experiment. What characterizes democracy is the process and negotiations. Democracy is about embracing diversity. Citizenship expands from duties and rights to practice and participatory community. And now I have the last slide. 1 minute, I finish. Copenhagen is considered one of the most, I would really wish to, no. Copenhagen is considered one of the most livable cities in the world. Denmark is considered one of the countries in the world with the highest level of confidence between people. But after the tragic shootings we experienced in February, streets in Copenhagen was full of police with machine guns. And the response to this was 40,000 people from Copenhagen gathered in peace demonstration to mourn and stress that this is not the way we want our country to go. We are forced to look at this event as a symptom of something out of balance in our society, perhaps too much consensus and ignorance of the need for social and cultural changes prevent us from recognizing the potential of cultural diversity. Martin Nussbaum, the American philosopher, has suggested that museums can contribute to social poetry. Social poetry can emerge when people's diversity is recognized as a premise and strength. The prerequisite for social poetry is intercultural dialogue, empathy, and imagination. She warns that if the attempt to overcome fear of religious and cultural diversity fails, the constitutional and ethical foundation of liberal democracies is at risk. Nussbaum advocates that consistent universal principles for the recognition of cultural and spiritual diversity. Democratic societies must be able to embrace the freedom of religious association for all. This is an objective to which museums can contribute by being public social learning environments promoting intercultural competences, producing empathy, curiosity, and friendship between people who are not alike. Gathering of strangers. Thank you very much.
Thank you so much, Ida. And I'm happy to invite Petra. Please come.